I would like to make a couple of housekeeping announcements. It's going to be a multi-language panel because we have participants from different countries. So please encourage everybody who needs it to take headphones for the simultaneous translation. We have a simultaneous translation. Для спікерів так само це буде багатоязикова панель.
This will be a multilingual panel, so please take your headsets. I will be using English as well as Russian and Ukrainian. Please use your headsets.
About the housekeeping announcements. We are moving ahead and developing with the technology. So for this panel, we are going to have questions. We're going to take questions from the floor after the discussion, but we're going to do this in an innovative way via Telegram. You might have seen all around the venue signs for KIEF app bot. Please do install this bot in your Telegram. And there's a button that says ask questions to the moderator. You can click this button, choose this panel, and I will automatically receive questions in my chat bot, and I will choose them and address them accordingly to whoever will be asked, whether to the panel or to the speakers. And so we will start. The panel that we have today is about international business, and it is about whether it is truly a global cooperation or a global competition story. And first of all, I would like to introduce distinguished speakers on this panel. First of all, next to me, Božidar Djelic, pronouncing it right, I hope, yep. Managing Director, Head of Lazard for Central and Eastern Europe, CIS, Greece, and Turkey. Yes, you can applaud while greeting the panelists. That's the way we do at public events. Nobody will be offended. Then Marco Tosson, Honorary Consul of Ukraine in Italy and the President of Confindustria Ucraina. Yeah. Anatoly Kinakh, the former Prime Minister of Ukraine and today the President of the Ukrainian League of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs. And Gennady Chizhikov, President of the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So since I'm a moderator, I'm the first to get the hands on the microphone. I may abuse this position for a little bit. And I would like to make an introduction. Why this panel? Why should we care about whether there is a growing competition or collaboration in global international business? And this is because we're living truly in unprecedented times when a lot of things that are happening today could not be foreseen, and we cannot find analogy in the human history. Because a lot of processes that were thought to be irreversible, like democratization or like globalization, are currently under big question mark. And a lot of experts and entire demographic actually doubt whether it should continue, whether those processes should be reversed. And first of all, we're all witnessing growing geopolitical tensions in the world and effectively slide back to the Cold War era and geopolitical tension between the Euro-Atlantic bloc and Russia and the East. And even in such democratic and tolerant societies as the European Union and the United States, we see growing national populism and economic nationalism and divisions so deep and radical in the society that we could not imagine, all accompanied by bitter political rivalry. And in some of the emerging markets that are the key drivers of the global economy and that were set as examples and role models for the emerging world, like Brazil or Turkey or Indonesia, China, we see potential reverse of democracy with almost unpredictable results of the ongoing presidential elections in Brazil, very difficult economic and political situation in Turkey, and so on. And the very architecture of economy and politics that has been so meticulously built after the Second World War is now being questioned. The role of international organizations, the importance of curbing climate change, and so on. And even economy, even trade and business is being affected to a degree never seen before, because at least in the Cold War era you could say that yes, but Soviet Union and developing countries, they still were interested in trade, they wanted to trade, make business together, and now you see two biggest economies in the world, China and the United States, and bitter trade war when U.S. imposed 250 billion worth of tariffs on goods from China. So all of this and rise of populism and economic nationalism poses a very big question. What should business communities do? What should business people do? How should we all perceive it? And the first question is to the guest next to me, to the panelist, Božidar. Now, in your opinion, by the way, if I may say so, Božidar once served as the Minister of Finance of Serbia, so you've been in both worlds, in government, in public service, and in business world. Now, do you think that globalization is irreversible, or is it not so? And can really world develop sustainably, and can the global economy grow without globalization? And now, do you expect in this context stronger international cooperation despite of political tensions, or you see that businesses will use this position, will use this rivalry to actually play along with politicians, sometimes for or in favor of the economic nationalism, to gain temporary victories? Your opinion?
Oh, Bože. There's at least, you have at least 3 questions in your questions, and each of them is probably a matter for the entire panel. So,
by the way, you have 4 minutes.
I have 4 minutes, yeah. So I would say globalization as understood of the world being interconnected by the internet, by trade, by information, and by movement of people, it is a process that nobody today can stop, in the sense of cutting all those links. The issue is whether this interconnectedness is going to continue to be deeper and deeper in a way of measuring it, the cross-border investments. And by the way, Lazard, which is in the top 5 investment banks in the world, I can tell you that over the last 15 years, the percent of deals on which we work, M&A deals, which are cross-border, has grown dramatically. Now, over 2/3 of what we do has to do with one company buying another company in another country. And quite often, over the last few years, from one continent to another one. So, as a modest testimony of this, we see it growing. And over the past few years, we see it being a bit slowed down. The amount of investment from China coming to the United States, for reasons that you already described, but also because the United States have imposed new ways of checking on security grounds whether a foreign investment, and so it happened, it's often from China, is accepted or not, is serving as a repellent. You have seen after the KUKA purchase of a Chinese in Germany of the major robotics company, there has been also something of a pushback, to the extent that the German government has prevented a power company from China buying 50 megahertz, just a German power producing company, not necessarily what you would think is the most strategic thing. So my point is that what we see is indeed over the past few years, and the election of Mr. Trump, you can say, but also the Brexit, but also, as you said, the populism, all of these are relatively coordinated, not globally, but kind of simultaneously signals that the ever-marching deepening of the globalization is now meeting some roadblocks. So,
it's slowing, right?
So on the first question, I mean, it is difficult to see how this can be stopped, because it would mean that to cut links that actually are deep down in terms of real politics, very deep. And you have seen that despite all the actions from the United States, last month was the month of the biggest commercial surplus of China to the United States, which is kind of a little bit of a paradox after all the rhetoric and everything that has been said. This is the month where China sold more than ever compared to what imported from the United States. So it is difficult to see it can be stopped. What one can see is more that this globalization will have more a regional aspect. In other words, look at what happened with NAFTA. The trade between United States and China is nothing compared to the trades that the United States has with Canada and Mexico. Those are by far more deeper, more numerous, both in terms of jobs, but also in terms of volumes, the trade that the United States has. And what we have seen is that after a lot of noise on all sides, maybe more on one side than on the other ones, there has been an arrangement which has shown some adjustments, but not a deep one. So in a way, on the first question, I would say we see that globalization is still prevalent. It cannot be stopped, but we see in the United States and also in the discussions we see between the European Union and the United Kingdom today in Brussels, you can see that this regional bloc, the EU, notwithstanding the interest that they have in continuing to trade with the UK, they find a higher interest and higher call of keeping that regional bloc together. So that's why, and I'll conclude my first 4 minutes already, globalization, yes, but we might well see more and more a regional flavor to it. North America with parts of South America, depending on the amount of populism that will happen in some countries there or not. Europe, and I think for Ukraine it's very important to observe what's going on around Brexit and how it's going. And then China, and actually this block of China is not only Southeast Asia, because there you can see that India does not necessarily want to be there. They would rather be in the Western bloc for reasons that we all know. The question mark will be to what extent Africa will be in one camp or another one. And that's today a very big flashpoint in international trade and competition because of the resources.
So for me as an investor and entrepreneur, it was a very useful tip from Božedar's first account is that when you're thinking about globalization, placing your product and your services, think regionally. It's slowing, one thing. Second, it's going more regional. So take care about your region, think regionally. Marco, that's a very good question coming to you. You represent not only one of the biggest countries in the European Union. You represent a country that is a very important trade and economic partner for Ukraine. And personally, I admire and love your country very much. And I'm worried because, you know, a lot of anti-globalism, anti-liberal comments and moods, at least on the surface, what we see on the surface, are emerging in your country. Now tell me, how do you assess Italy in a global context now? Are you really making U-turn? Is Italy making U-turn from globalization? And do you think that Italy as a country, or any other European country for that matter, could be really competitive in the world without this single market and single block of European Union against such giants as the US, as China? Please.
Thanks for the interesting question.
Well, I did my best.
You know, if to reply to your question, I have the round ball, we say in Italy, no? To understand what will be the future, what will be the globalization in general, and the trend in general. What I can say, you know, Italy can be a good partner for Ukraine, first of all. Globalization, okay. We have this trend of Chinese that is extending very much internationally. Chinese is investing a lot in Italian market, is investing a lot in Ukrainian market. I think anyway we have the good power. We also have an office in China and we are quite active in the relation with Chinese market. It's strategical things to understand not say your enemy, but your collaborator, your partner, what they are doing, what is strategic they are done internationally. So as a Confindustria today we opened this office and we try to make a strength, you know, to make the Italian company collaborate with Ukraine, because we think that there is a good platform for Italian company in this market and vice versa for Ukrainian company in the Italian market. Globalization, yeah, is a very big question, you know, how the strength will be, how there will be the things to control this type of parameter internationally. It's very difficult to assess. He was very right on the sentence that you said, you know, what is the line to follow. What I can say, the line is try to be upgrade the company. Ukraine needs to be upgraded the system of the company, not to play only with raw material, no play also with the basic things, but transforming. And the collaboration with Italian market can be quite strong because we are a country which develop in the transformation of material. We don't have raw material in Italy. We have our success in transformation of raw material. But I came back to your question. To say, okay, there is populism coming, on the political side and these type of things. You must understand that Italy get the success of Italy not because of the government, but because of the industry, because of the people. The small and medium industry create Italy, not the government create the popularity of Italy. So it's a matter of the possibility of company, of people that want to grow, want to create a trend, to create the things of this. For sure, the government need internationally to make it the good support, the good activity for making this possibility done in the right way. The populism in Italy, yes, is to destroy a system of European, okay, is very stressed in this moment, okay, we have this type of things. For sure, we cannot be compete in the world without to be inside a system, without to be inside a system which is called Europe, okay. We are too much small as Ukraine, as Italy, to be outside a system. We cannot compete as a country as China or as the United States. Okay, we need to be inside a system. So, good or bad, we need to appoint a way how to make it much more efficient a system together. I'm working today, we inaugurate Confindustria, and I'm working to create this good link between Ukraine and Italy, first of all, and the international to create the good support for Ukraine in going in other countries as China. As China, Italy have a good trend of developing, of exportation, of technology innovation, and I would like to take a lot of Chinese and Italian and Ukrainian collaboration together. We already have a project for the next year to put in this platform this type of project.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So the key takeaway from me, from what you've said, definitely countries as Italy and Ukraine must be part of the wider bloc, wider economic power and market to be competitive in this world. And yes, it is true that small, medium-sized businesses and Italian entrepreneurs and their dedication is what makes strong Italian economy and amazing products that we all love from Italy. But see, small question, just for 1 minute, Marco, to you, piggybacking on that, because that's important. I'm an investor, and I love Italy, and I invest in Italy, and I believe in entrepreneurial skills, but then the government submits the populist budget that Brussels doesn't accept, and you see the markets start selling off Italian bonds. What do you do as an entrepreneur? You wish economy and politics were not intertwined, but they are, no matter what we want. So what do you do in this case?
So if the government doesn't support you, then...
No, yeah, well, if the government, by its policies, by its moves, by its claims, is actually destroying investors' trust in your economy, even though economically, by numbers, nothing has changed, right? But bonds, Italian bonds went off, and investors starting to sell off. Nothing changed in the economy, just because of the budget move of your government. What do you do as an entrepreneur in this environment?
In this moment, the entrepreneur is trying to find the right partnership, in general,
yep. Yes.
To find the right partner in order to have like a basic things international in the market. So Italian is expanding,
Yes.
To have safe in the market, safe in collaboration in different market. Okay, this is what to avoid instability of some market, instability of government, instability of things. In our Italian market, Italian people already open companies, opening branch, opening activity differently in different market in order to balance all the activity, in different things. We are trying to balance the macro system, having, reducing the risk of political things.
Thank you, thank you. Анатолій Кирилович, тепер питання до вас. Ви...
Mr. Kirillevich, now the question to you, You're the only panel participant, one of the few in this forum, actually, who had this immense experience in Mr. Kinach, you occupied a lot of major senior positions, but then an equal part of your life you dedicated to the private sector and the industry and the business. I have a question. We often hear that the world is turbulent, investors are not and are very concerned, and even bigger countries like Ukraine must be a part of an economic bloc. We were considered a part of an economic bloc, the CIS or the customs union led by Russia, but we decided that we want to be a part of the European economic space and a member of the European Union. We're on the way to that, so we're in between these blocks right now. So what do you think? How do you think Ukrainian business should act? Do we play in tune to the nationalistic slogans and try to introduce tariffs and quotas to protect ourselves in the trade wars, to try to create favorable conditions and maybe try to tilt the competitive environment to our side? Or should we boost international cooperation, try to enter international markets, and to intensify our communication with the international business? What do you think is the way for us? First of all, I thank the organizers for organizing this amazing discussion, which is very important for Ukraine as well. But just to say a few words on the main topic, globalization and competition are very intertwined. I can recall the periods of the first industrial revolutions from history. So when such nations as the Britain, France, and the U.S., before they became actually internationally competitive, they were very isolationist and very protectionist. As soon as they felt their strength, they stepped up their efforts for globalization. So these things are very interconnected. So the globalization and protectionism, they have an influence on us on all the stages of our development. I must state that one of the reasons why Mr. Trump won the presidency is because the U.S. has felt a negative impact of globalization, because in manufacturing was moved to other regions with lower labor costs, where they increased their competitiveness, but they decreased their own incomes. So the Americans, who were used of their lifestyle and their level of welfare increase every few years, they realized that the process ground to a halt. And this reflects in the foreign policy of the U.S. now. But I agree with my colleagues that globalization is irreversible. Now we need to look for a mix or a balance of advantages of globalization with national interests on the other hand, with regional policy, and to create conditions of egalitarian competition, including such areas as world trade and economy. Unfortunately, Ukraine is right now on a very risky stage. First of all, the portion of Ukrainian product in the global GDP is 0.12%. But we're not even talking about these quantitative things as in qualitative things, because we are degrading further and further into a raw material country. So for us, we are preoccupied with maintaining our statehood. But generally, a raw material economy cannot generate enough jobs. And we see this, we see life level drop and emigration happen because there are not enough competitive jobs. So when we analyze EU directives and programs by US presidents and programs of countries such as Germany, UK and France, there are clear priorities there. The first priority being international competitiveness of the national product. Secondly is export expansion. We're not talking about export policy, we're talking about expansion of export. And the third point is usually national protectionist measures. This is what is very, I think, important for Ukraine. These things will define our competitiveness and our place in the global distribution of labor and industry. And this is where we have to work, including business, public-private partnership, and formation of clear and reasonable rules of the game. So our takeaways is that we need to play by the rules, and we need to be competitive, but we need to develop ourselves first. Gennady, in all this context, business organizations such as local and global organizations such as the International Chamber of Commerce, including the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, which is the part of the global chambers of commerce. What do you see the role of organizations like yours? Is this a political player which must protect the private sector's interests as opposed to the state, or is this an instrument, or this is a tool to develop business contacts, business relationships, and to implement international projects? Thank you very much, Nikolai. First of all, I'd like to greet everyone here. Thank everyone for coming. But talking about business organizations, they must deal with development. They must maintain interests and trends. One of the more important tasks of any big business organizations is to understand trends and to publicize them. I think Ukraine, unfortunately, always misses the main trends. In the beginning of our independence, we closed down. We thought that protectionism was good, but it was not successful. But then, by the time we are trying to open up, now the world is becoming more protectionist. But there's a new global trend right now, global economy. But the global economy, we need to understand what this is. So the ships during Columbus's time, that was a global economy. That was transition of capital. This is what we fail to notice. We don't need a passport to participate in a global economy. We don't. All we need is a computer and some brains, and you're a global player. And now we're against the trend again. And again, most of our people started leaving Ukraine. Most of our better people. So we need some organization in terms of. In order to foresee and communicate these trends. And that is what our Chamber of Commerce attempts to do. But we are a part of different associations because, for me, issues of competition and cooperation as well are like yin and yang. These are two sides of the same coin. First, we all want to compete. And secondly, we understand that this is becoming dangerous, so we need to develop and go to a new level. So, in my opinion, right now, for Ukraine, we have a unique chance. God is helping us, but we fail to see it. So, strictly speaking, we see how does protectionism work. So, American economy is still developing. They're always complaining, but it's still developing. It's on the rise. European economy and Germany is on the rise. Many countries are on the rise. So China is even saying that they're fine. They're opening their borders. They're opening their markets even. Ukraine, thanks to these protectionist measures, it has new chances because the U.S. is pushing out China, was creating new opportunities for us. We're creating, we're having opportunities in the European markets, in the Chinese market. We need to see the trend. We need to stop complaining and bickering and move forward. Dear colleagues, we have over 2 million entrepreneurs. but we only have 130,000 entrepreneurs. Engaging in foreign economic activity, and about 13,000 maybe working with Europe. We need to just pick up steam and keep moving. Honestly, I didn't expect this kind of a response. Such business organizations as the Chamber of Commerce, they accumulate so much first-hand information so that you can read that and you can react to that as an entrepreneur.
Back in what the panelists have said, so what are the roles for the emerging markets then? In this context, now we have heard that the role of Ukraine in global GDP is pretty minimal, and in general I would like to remind everyone that 85% and even more than 85% of global GDP is being produced by 20 countries of the world, by G20. Everybody who are beyond the G20 club are producing in total up to 15% of the world's GDP. So you have to take it into consideration when evaluating your position in the world. So what is the role for emerging markets? What should we do? Should we take advantage of all the mayhem that's happening, use some protectionism, get stronger, then do the expansion as Anatoly Kirillovich suggested? Or should we, or is it even worse for us because investors are becoming even more conservative and would not let as much as we hope of capital to go to the emerging market? Please.
Again, 4 minutes for a very big question. I would say over the past few months, when you talked about emerging markets, you would have heard most of bad news because the amount of money going into the emerging market funds is being taken down. The quantitative easing is progressively ending in the United States, Europe, UK, and Japan. At the same time, the role of emerging markets, as you told me, as you asked me, is to emerge. And so the trick is that not all of them emerge. Some of them are kept in that status for a long time. And of course, I mean, in 3 minutes and 16 seconds, I'm not about to tell you what Ukraine should do, because this is really for the Ukrainians here to be present. So on big topics, I will give you just a few examples. So in my experience, I was, just first example, the science minister and technology of my country. So I went to Silicon Valley, and we met a company called Altera, which is producing chips for the telecom industry, very high added value. And so I was explaining to the CEO and to the CTO that we have low taxes, that we're giving subsidies, and he was not listening to me. And at one point I said, I'll stop. I said, you're not interested in what I'm telling you. What are you interested in? He said, my friend, I have $3 billion in the bank. Your tax breaks, I'm not interested. What I'm interested is, what type of engineers do you have? What languages do they know, technical? Are they able to work into multi-language, multicultural setting? If you have 200 of those, I open tomorrow a development center in Belgrade. So I said, okay, that's concrete. I come back home, I bring the dean of the electrical engineering faculty, I bring the entrepreneurs from the IT system and said, guys, so how many of those do we have? What do you think? I found 12. So this day I was very sorry I'm not the minister of Ukraine, because Ukraine every year produces 157,000 graduates in engineering. Yes, there is a risk that some of them might leave, but at the same time, this is the absolute competitive advantage that Ukraine should focus on. Because there, it is not about having 1 hectare more of land, it is not about spending 1 more hour. This is scalable to the infinity in this technological world. So that's one aspect. The second one is about how do you take advantage of all the opportunities. Of course, you should take advantage in agricultural produce of any opening that comes from the trade wars between the big blocks, of course. But let me come back still to the first question and my first answer. It is at the same time very important to know where your home is. And actually, despite all its problems, Europe, and I think the effects of the deep trade agreement that Ukraine has achieved, and also the very important visa-free agreement that was reached, this is something that is going to produce ever more effects. So when we at Lazard talk to people who are interested into Ukraine, of course they have a few questions about next year's elections. I will not hide that from you, okay? And I tell them, don't you worry, everything will be okay. And they say, Božidar, we like you a lot, but in 2004 and 2014, you see, so we will see what happens in 2019. I think it's gonna be okay. And I think that the more important question that they ask us is, how is the trade agreement with Europe going? What is the percentage of the trade that Ukraine is doing? Because if you look at, for example, two countries that today are not the most popular in Europe, Hungary and Poland, their economies are still doing very well because both countries have found a very good way to be integrated in the added value, in the value chain of, in particular, the German industry. So that could be the German industry, that could in light industry be the Italian industry. So once you're linked with stable trading arrangements, with very large partners, then, as my Italian colleague said, they will help you more easily than you alone to go to China. Germany will help you more easily than alone to go to Africa. Yes. Chinese partners also might take you also more easily to China than you on your own. So I think this idea of competition and collaboration, there is not one answer. You have to be smart to emerge. And I am certain with the human capabilities in Ukraine, I have no doubt that you will succeed.
Thank you. Well, I'm always happy when a foreigner promotes my country better than I do, so it's always a pleasure. Key takeaways for me is, first of all, talent and abundant talent, importantly, is your key competitive advantage, and luckily we have a lot of it. We need to bring it up, we need to scale it, we need to take care of it. As the Ukrainian, once again, I'm very happy to hear that. Second is that when there are trade wars, use it as much as you can to your advantage. There's nothing wrong with it. And third is never, ever, after Brexit and Trump, predict presidential elections. That was the third takeaway from me. Marco, now, in my times when I was the head of the EU office for the Ukrainian League of Industrial Entrepreneurs, we did very fine events with Confindustria in Rome and across Italy. It was a big success. We had a lot of attention from entrepreneurs. We saw amazing enterprises all over your country. And we were coming with this hope that since we in Ukraine have a lot of talent and raw material, and Italy is so advanced in many, many industries and sectors, Italian entrepreneurs would want to join forces with the Ukrainian entrepreneurs and build value-added manufacturing and production in Ukraine, using Ukrainian talent, using Ukrainian raw materials. And we were welcomed all over Italy, right until I voiced this theory. Then everybody said, oh, I thought you came to buy our product. Okay, well, here's nice pizza. So, we've been repeating it like mantra, value-added products in Ukraine, value-added products in Ukraine. And really, with the know-how that Italy has, it's remarkable in machinery, in agriculture, in food products, in pharmaceuticals, you name it. Now, do you have any knowledge of real investment products in the pipeline when Italian companies are planning or already doing investment in Ukraine to capture this talent and raw material wealth that we have in Ukraine? Do you know of such projects? And if not, what should we do to finally kick it off?
Yes, I heard all the talking between the people. You know, first of all, I'm really a fan of Ukraine. I represent as a consul of Ukraine for 6 years, honorary consul of Ukraine in Venezia. Okay, so I'm fan of Ukraine more than Ukrainian people. Okay, first of all. Second, I trust very much that, you know, that the economy here can be quite good. I try to incentivize the people to look outside. Okay, to look outside, to have a vision outside. What I think positive about this country, that I see a lot of young people. Young people are the force of this country. Doesn't matter what is going the politica, but the young people is making big transformation of this country. And young people is the people that can make the country from raw material to technology things, to upgrade things in the country. So this is the main point of the things. We have different projects at Confindustria. We create this Confindustria Association, the biggest association in Italy, and we have a very big project with many Italian companies that want to develop here. We discover that in Ukraine there is a very interesting activity in intellectual, not only in manpower, okay, that there is can be quite good. But this company coming from Soviet time, this company coming from an old system, this company needed to be transformed. We have a big project, you know, for example, in a coal matter, coal project in coal factory. Okay, you have very big technology, we have big engineer, and we try to, for example, make a big collaboration with a company here, buying a share of this company in order to make international project. Italy, very nice country, but it's not only spaghetti and pizza, it's technology, it's a lot of things. It's, anyway, unfortunately, I must say, I'm Italian, it's an old country. An old country which the bureaucracy stopped many activity. And we found in Ukraine the possibility to make the bureaucracy much more faster, much more possibility to do it, much more flexibility to do it in fast way. So, for example, a joint of an Italian company which is doing coal sector projecting machinery, and with an old system, Soviet time system, which can be transformed very fast with the Italian technology, can be a quite winning point to make business outside, to be business in China either, because either China needs this type of technology. But if you sell your technology, your raw material as it is now, you're selling for 0 or 0 plus 1. If you're selling technology or know-how with Italian technology, you sell for 100. The cost in Italy is very high of production, cost high of manpower, okay, manpower technology, but putting together your capability and Italian capability can be winning point in many markets. Many markets you don't know, but for example, German market, most of the machine of Porsche, Mercedes, these are produced in Italy. The leather is produced in Italy. Many components are produced in Italy. Germany is very good people. They are assembling these products. Okay, the design, some design is made in Italy. So, putting together, efforts together with a country which is growing a lot, with young people, people that think about technology, about new things, new trend. Okay, and people that already live the experience, the problem that there is in the market. This can be really bomba project. Winning project. Fantastic. This is what I try to support. Thank you very much.
So I would summarize it. We're looking for bomb projects with Italy, and to be serious, we really need to plug Ukraine into the global value chains. And if we can do it through Italy, I'm pretty happy with it. I don't think anyone from Ukraine will regret or refrain from going to Italy as often as possible, me included. Okay? Анатолій Кирилович, скажіть, будь ласка, ну от ми почули...
Mr. Kinach, please tell us. We've heard all of this. We have the talent, we have the raw materials. They want to do business with us. We need to become part of the added value chains. But these are generalities. However, I'd like to ask you, Mr. José Manuel Atracanales, head of Axon company, voiced an interesting approach. He said, I think either 6 months ahead or 10 years ahead, strategically or tactically. Between this, I make no forecasts. Concerning Ukrainian economy, in terms of international economic development, what do we have to do in 6 months' time to get the most tangible effect? And where should we be in years to make our development as sustainable as possible, to to grant an irreversible economic effect. This is quite a challenge and question for this forum. First of all, I beg your pardon for being too brief and concise, but I'll say this. I often recall my friend, the former Prime Minister of Lithuania, who is a friend of Ukraine, Albas Brazauskas, who said in 2000s to me in an informal conversation, "I'm very worried with the future of Ukraine, Mr. Anatoly." I asked why. He said, "Unfortunately, I see that even now in Ukraine, meaning then, there is no understanding that the national interests of the state are the highest priority compared to the ratings, the current political situations, interpersonal communication as well, and other things." We were closing the atomic power plants. We were discussing the Institute of Proprietorship, the reforming the land market. And he said, there is a taboo in Lithuania, even during the elections to the parliament. You cannot use the national strategic issues as a leverage in the intergovernment, in the domestic political fight, domestic political competition. The national strategic interests are the basis for domestic cooperation. This is what we lack in Ukraine, or we need to understand in Ukraine. We've been independent for 28 years, and still we have no understandable, tangible strategy of transforming Ukraine into a European state that should be based on the balance of our national interests, our potential, and the world around us as a foundation for development. This is one of the key issues. Today, the Parliament adopted the draft budgets for 2019 in the first reading. The key budgetary law of Ukraine was adopted without the program for economic development. Our entrepreneurs do not know the rules of the game. Who shall provide the resource for development? When we are abroad in Washington or Brussels, I often tell our partners, let's give Ukraine not fish, but a fishing rod. Let's teach Ukrainians how to fish. Based on the unprecedented intellectual, natural, and technological potential and the talented people, let's make the best use of it and not make new loans, but repay our old loans and make our economy efficient and consolidate around this goal. Finalizing the tax code, we should do this because this will provide the competition ability of our state. Harmonizing Ukraine with the standards of the European Union is one of the key goals for our state, for the standards of the rule of law, of transparent competition, etc. The Ukrainian companies that faces these standards will be competitive throughout the world, including the European market. We should implement this really strictly to understand that these are our priorities of today. For this should be understood by all of the decision makers. We should be based on the strategy adopted by the parliament, approved by the president. All of the developed countries did this. You are no exception. Your country is no exception. You said that organizations like yours have a unique vision and can see the trend and should help business develop and take up new markets and make use of new possibilities. I have a doubled-up question. First, Maybe we should stop run around the world telling people about the perspectives of Ukraine and asking for investments with such difficulties. But maybe we should get to work finally and expand into the world markets. Metinvest, Mironev, bakery, factory. Maybe we should concentrate not on attracting investment here, but maybe we should expand ourselves into foreign niches and markets and find our place in the world marketplace. Which spheres, which industries, sectors have the most potential for Ukrainian business nowadays? I think that Ukraine shouldn't get too nervous. We're sometimes too nervous about not being noticed. We are, believe me, and people understand where we are moving, towards what. We are the bakery center. We used to be the bakery center of the world. Now we are moving to being the world's supermarket. We shouldn't just produce grain and sunflower oil. We should feed half of the world. This is our ambitious goal. In Ukraine, a lot it depends on our psychology. You see, we should just make it our national idea to support everyone who is creating something and doing something. The spirit of entrepreneurship is more valuable than your assets in the bank. When every day we hear news of entrepreneurs being put to prison or getting fines, people begin people get scared. Maybe they think, maybe I should go work at the government. It's a tragedy when most of our students want to be prosecutors or judges. That's a bad sign, a bad signal. So in the 1990s, we've seen a unique period, not the criminal side of it, but what we did was an ingenious thing that nobody else in the world did. The state, from the state socialism, government socialism, we leapt right into capitalism and made a U-turn in terms of history. Ukraine has tremendous potential. What should we concentrate upon? On the speed. I think we should spend more time teaching our people the foreign languages. When we need translators and interpreters to understand the world news, we understand that we are not in trend. The quicker Ukraine understands that in terms of potential we have more than enough, and Ukraine has all the chances to become a global player, not in agriculture, not only in agriculture and metallurgy, but also in spheres that provide us added value, the people, the human capital, the human resources. As soon as people understand that, when I met the president of Portugal, he paid his respects to Ukrainian entrepreneurs and said, thanks to you, our GDP grew by several percent. Our key capital is the people, including those who are among the audience nowadays. We need to tell them every day, every morning, you are great, you are wonderful, please go ahead, and we will be even feared in many countries because of how powerful and how much potential we can. So my takeaways are to be fearless, to learn English. The speed of processing information nowadays is the key aspect. If we fall behind here, we can't be successful.
All the panelists that I think each of you will spin into slightly different field. So we see that populism and economic nationalism and trade wars and protectionism, as well as liberalization and level competition field, all of it should exist and even coexist, but it depends on the timing, it depends on the situation which country is in, and so on and so on. So, judging today, that's the only thing we can actually do. Judging by the situation that we have in the world and in Ukraine today, what will lead the world and Ukraine to prosperity is that partial employment of protectionism and economic nationalism and disregard of the global trends for the interest of your country, or is it active and more mindful participation in the further globalization with consideration of such important trends as climate change when developing your product, service, or devising economic strategy for your country, which will bring us to the brighter future? Božidar.
I think I would need to be at the same time the Pope, the head of the United Nations, and many other functions to answer that. And of course, I think more modestly, I believe that even our discussion today shows that if things were simple, it will be too easy. And the truth is that you cannot ignore globalization and the need to appease and to meet the interest of those who are more powerful than you, who can either harm you or can help you. But at the same time, it is difficult to take advantage of the world if you don't know what you want to do. What is your interest? And that's why I think the debate, I think, yes, indeed, there is the tool to have the, as Prime Minister said, to have the midterm strategies. And most countries do have midterm strategies, and that's not difficult. The difficult thing is to implement them, and two, to be relevant. Because everybody wants to have the Silicon Valley. Everybody wants to do higher added value products. Everybody wants to keep the most talented people at home. Everybody wants that. But some actually are more successful than others. So let me try maybe a little bit, very modestly, in my remaining 2 minutes, for Ukraine. I would say the first thing is that it would be good for Ukraine to define what are its strategic resources. And I'll be very open here, speaking only on my behalf, not my organization. I find that Ukraine is a little bit pushed around on the key issue of agricultural land. I am not completely convinced that it is the best course of action to allow any foreigner to buy any quantity of foreign land. And don't tell me that if it's a legal structure which is in Ukraine, that will be enough, because of course intelligent people will do all kinds of integral, vertical ownership structures to make sure that they look Ukrainian, and they will not be. That might not be, at the end of the day, something that politically and geostrategically would be good at a time when, because of climate change that you mentioned, actually top agricultural land is going to be probably even more interesting and important than oil or gas. So I wish you would have in Ukraine a very open debate on that to see what is your interest and not what the IMF or the World Bank or whoever else wants you to do to tick a box to get a tranche. That's the first thing. Second thing, when you do that, then of course not everything can be strategic. Let's take Turbatom. I hear different opinions. It is strategic, will sell a minority stake, a majority stake. I did not hear people recognizing that just 2 months ago, General Electric took an impairment, which basically means that they took a loss of $23 billion on their turbine division. On Antonov or Sich, of course, this looks strategic, right? This is defense, this is transport of troops. It smells very strategic. But at the same time, one should recognize that over the last 12 months, Bombardier, with the full support and many billions of Canadian dollars of the Quebec and the Canadian government, in the end, had to give for exactly 3 euros, the entire CS program to Airbus of fully valid planes that were proven absolutely workable and which already had sales. They just could not sustain the competition in this very oligopolistic, in fact, duopolistic market with a third player that is coming, which is a Chinese one. And at the same time, only a few weeks later, you had Embraer, who had to marry with Boeing. So I think that's the debate also on other resources. Maybe there, you need to find the proper deal with some of the undisputed leaders of the cartel, which in the future, in some sectors, will lead. And then after that, frankly, the rest is about the talent of the people. Because I agree with Suchishkov. Who knows what talented Ukrainian people will invent? Who knows what are the services, if they're left to their own and not being hampered, what we can achieve. And for that, I suppose, one thing that Ukraine had as a problem was that a few men held many companies. It would be good to have many people hold a few very big companies, so that you have a mix, and that this system is actually more acceptable, because you would not have just a few capitalists and everybody working for them, but actually ever more companies where people do hold shares, and they are in their own right a bit of a market players to create the large-scale companies. I don't want to make and I'll close there, just as an example. As you can see, I feel very passionate about your country as well, where I lived 10 years ago when I was the head of a bank. And for Ukraine, if you look at progress every 6 months, you can be very, very frustrated. But if you take 10 years, you see it's going in the right direction. So it's, you know, you just need to keep faith and maybe accelerate a bit the pace, because the world is accelerating. So I have no shares, neither are they my clients. And I don't know exactly how the company is made. But what I can tell you, I live in Paris. I saw the huge effort that the major producer of poultry in France, LDC, made to make sure that MHP does not buy Doux, which is the number 2 in the market. The vicious campaign against MHP is a compliment to this Ukrainian company. It shows that the leaders in that industry, which is non-red meat proteins, which are in demand. Tomorrow, maybe Ukraine could produce actually genetically engineered proteins. That shows that at least in that one sector, Ukraine is starting to produce a European leader, which will be able to establish a very long-standing position in the market. And so hopefully that company, progressively, in order to expand, will issue more shares and more shares and more shares, so that it would not be the company of one person, but actually of very many Ukrainian shareholders that support a multinational company from Ukraine that is controlling a very big chunk of the poultry and maybe some other segments. So that's a few ideas, I think, where nothing prevents Ukraine to be successful. Look at the 2 Koreas. Look, one people, one religion, one climate, one geographic zone, cut in 1952 because of the Cold War. You take it 50 years down the road, in the south, one of the most advanced and the richest countries on the world. In the north, one of the poorest and the most antagonistic countries, less accepted one in the world. The difference? The way to think. Nothing else. Organization, way to think, strategy, every day, every day, every day. Is South Korea perfect? No. Many of their presidents have been put in prison. Many of the CEOs of the companies have been put in prison. But overall, that's a system which has produced excellent results. So there's no reason why Ukraine can achieve at least that type of success.
Thank you, Baja. Well, that's very comprehensive and positive outlook indeed. That's for sure. The key takeaways for me is, first of all, even today, in all the world, even big names, multinational, well-established legacy companies are never too big to fail, first of all. Secondly, we do have international competitive players from Ukraine emerging globally, and this is very inspiring. Marco, so what is your conclusion? what is the best, you know, you like this, in an old Slavic tale, you have this tombstone and you have to choose, go right, left, or straight. Now, so which road should we, and by the way, Italy too, take? Is it protectionism, nationalism, at least temporarily, or is it further globalization and push for liberalization, and with consideration, of course, of climate change that we all depend on?
To found a way, to found the real right strategy is very difficult to say what the world is saying.
Which way to go?
Yeah, you know, as I say and I repeat, you know, you are a young country, young develop, young mentality. You know, let's use the capability that you have. You know, you have this big strength that you can change very fast. We are not able as Italian to change so fast as you can do, and I see transformation the last few years, you know, very fast. Just to adopt, you say, okay, it's not very long for a government to adopt a law, to adopt a system for legislation. In Italy, if we adopt a change of legislation, we take 10 years. Here we are speaking about 5 years, and the transformation of legislation is total. Okay, so you can be look also what is happening a little bit outside of Ukraine, you know, and to try to start with the basic point: what I have, what can be better, can be the future. Okay, to put too much points in the general vision, it will be like a stop everything. You know, let's do step by step. You know, and work a little bit what can be the vision in general. To say, okay, young people we have good formation. We can form more. We can have international collaboration with people. You know, from this base we can work, organize ourselves, collaborate with other countries, and grow in this matter. I think there is a big future for your country. Let's look positive on young people and international activity, international collaboration. Open the mind a little bit more. Okay, cancel a little bit the old strategic system of thinking Soviet way. Sorry to say that, but sometimes I found old system to think in a Soviet way. Cancel a little bit this type of things, you know, and accept the young people in the bad and in good thinking they are doing, because the young people sometimes make a lot of mistake, but also in the mistake they try to do good things, you know, and this is positive for a country, is at least to do something. You see the exposition that is on the other room, I was astonished. You see the technology, the things, the innovation, the things that the people are trying to incentivize. I see new park in IT technology. Okay, it's existing also in Italy, but you know, how long to make it this? 20 years. How long to make it here? 3 years. So you must be, you know, happy that this happened here. You must be thinking that you're doing steps ahead very fast. Think about that. Look around what's happening, okay, and understand that you are in the right way. Accept only some suggestion from other country that can help you a little bit more to target the things. Accept the suggestion of some businessmen or some technological people or some university to make more target your vision in the market, you know. So step by step, let's do it this. Your question very nice, very interesting, but we are speaking about the dreams. So let's think about the basic things and step by step to grow in the different things. There is a lot of things to change in Ukraine. There is a lot of possibility to do it. You know, I learned a little bit what is Ukraine. A lot of things to do.
And picking up on, very good answer, thank you. I will be very specific now. So do you see today Ukrainian and Italian businesses, are they competitors or are they partners? More, I mean, we all partners and competitors at some point, but more. Are Ukrainian and Italian private sector today more competitors or more partners?
They are competitive, they are competitors. They are more partner than competitors.
They are more partners.
They are more partner than competitors.
Fantastic.
This can be winning point.
Fantastic. Толі Кірович, у мене такі саме до вас високі питання, як тут всі мені.
Mr. Kinach, I have some very lofty question to you, but still, we have an economic choice as a private sector and the national economy of Ukraine. Do we use these global trends and use these protectionist instruments and these economic protectionism, isolationism, or do we as Ukraine conduct a policy of keeping our globalization and merging our markets into international markets and intensify our communication with international business, just like Marco is saying, just like Bozhidar said, companies like MHP and others, just trying to find ways to be more partners with Ukrainian, with European business, or so are we more partners or are we more competitors? What do you think? You see, there are certain constants in such things as competition. It was, is, and will always be. Nobody really likes their competitors, even despite any kind of rhetoric about partnership and trust. We need to understand that. There are such things as economic patriotism, when the state is determined and the system is geared towards creating jobs in the national economy, so that partnership is equal, that is transparent and mutually profitable. And I'm not even talking about competition. And we can't be angry at other states because they have to protect their national interests, politically and economically. Of course, it's better when it's civilized and it's modern and contemporary, and this is what Ukraine must learn how to do as soon as possible, all across the board, despite of whether it's east or west. When we're talking about international cooperation, this is irrevocable. We often discuss our export structure to the European Union, but we need to understand that at this stage, when our state requires global modernization, for us, European markets are not only consumer markets. We're talking about investment markets and modernization markets. And we need to think about this component very diligently. We need to localize in manufacturing. Sometimes maybe we need to replace import wherever that's competitive. Maybe some protectionism, as other states are doing, like the United States. And we, as a state, needs to learn about that, because global competition is, was, and will be. And just to wrap up, I remembered a folk parable. I'd like to. So, winter, woods, and there is a wolf pack, a hungry wolf pack, and they meet a rabbit, and they want to eat him. And the rabbit says, "Don't eat me. I will bring you to a place with very fat sheep." So the rabbit brings to the sheep. So the wolves eat the sheep, and they also eat the rabbit. And they decide, they're trying to figure out what to write on their tombstone. And they can't say comrade. They won't write comrade. They can't write friend because they ate him as well. And then a wise wolf said, "To our partner." The tombstone goes to our partner. So competition, partnership, they're eternal, but we need to understand that we need to do our homework. And we need to promote our national interests in civilized, modern methods, and we will have a dignified place in the world. I don't know. One of our company slogans is "Partners of the Future." I don't even know if it's a good or a bad thing now. Maybe we should work on our marketing and reinvent ourselves, because everybody thinks that we're going to eat them. But on the other hand, just like Bozhidar said, we're going to be competitive. Maybe we eat into other markets. Mr. Gennady, one question to you. Information-wise and export evaluation-wise, such concentrates of business community as the chambers of commerce. So The Economist like Michael Pence, who got Nobels in economics, I think in 09 or 2010, he has proven practically and mathematically that globalization is good even for the developing poorer nations, even mathematically. It's not theoretical, it's not that it's just good, it's not speculative, it's mathematical. So this year, the Nobels in economics were awarded to two scientists who have proven that if you implement all the necessary measures in the economy to limit global warming to 2 degrees, it is possible to develop and grow the world economy both for developed and developing nations, because one of the bigger things about climate change is that climate action hampers economic growth, and President Trump is one of the proponents of this theory, including also Poland and others. So the best minds of the planet prove that practically and mathematically this is so. But the world fails to react, and like Mr. Kinnock is saying, with slogans, we're all for globalization, liberalization, in terms of slogans, but locally we all try to combat our competitors. So who do we imitate? No, I don't mean imitate, but which ideology, which way should we follow to be successful in the world?
I'll be pretty brief. I can't argue with the Nobel Prize winner. The only option for us is now to get the feeling and to get the use of this unique global chance. Here I'd like to draw your attention to the following. We have the global historic memory in Ukraine, our blood, our nerves, the country that builds or used to build the largest atomic power plants, cosmic spaceships and airplanes. We shouldn't do simple things. We shouldn't cut the forests, cut the woods. What we're doing now is just cutting forests using the raw materials as a pause before moving on to the next ambitious goal. Every Ukrainian should, at least once in his or her life, take a flight in the Mriya airplane, the largest airplane in the world. In my opinion, when we trust the business globally, the business does impossible things. In 6 years, Ukrainian business became top of the world's players of sunflower market. We control 50% of the raw materials in this sphere. The electric, in the energy field, the same. My point is, in terms of IT, we are almost European leaders. In Central and Eastern Europe, we are leaders. We'll let the IT live, and it lives and prospers. For instance, the honey industry, producing honey. We are number 2 in Europe by production of honey. It's trendy in Europe to live sustainably and healthy food, organic food. Ukrainian berries, Ukrainian honey comes in hand here. Globally, you can't be a walled garden globally. We should open up the opportunities, open the chances to make our market competitive. We will be competitive even compared to France and China. Freedom is the global chance for us. We have nothing to fear. Here I agree with the Nobel Prize winners. Yes, applause. Thank you. So, we will use IT people, honey, berries, airplanes, questions from the audience. I haven't received Telegram chatbot questions. I don't know for what reasons, so maybe let's make it all in good old-fashioned way. Questions and answers. Please present yourself, be very brief. And my name is Viktor Skarshavsky. I'm an economist. My question is to Mr. Janich. What is the amount of investment by Lazard Bank into Ukraine? In what spheres and how much do you plan to invest? I love questions like these.
Bank helping investors. We are not an investor ourselves. We have a part of Lazard, which is Lazard Asset Management, and I don't know what they do because otherwise I would have some, compliance problems. Today, when we talk to the investors about Ukraine, they see three risks. One, devaluation. Two, political changes. Three, still influence of deep power that could one day destroy what they built. It's still there. I'm very open with you. Is it less than before? It is. And what I see is already a differentiation by sectors. So it happens. In the energy sector, the investors in the energy sector are used to working in difficult environments, so they're not so afraid. If you talk about agriculture, same story. Those people deal with the assets that are in the country that could, in the worst of times, be taken away from them, so they know they're used to that and they're not afraid. So I think this is the priority, to attract the best possible partners, keeping your national interest in this. Upstream gas, because as everybody who knows about this sector would tell you, Ukraine should be able to be self-sufficient and maybe also be able to export. Now that's a priority. Think about how you want to open upstream gas and oil. Two, in agriculture, I already talked about the ownership of land. So let's put this aside. I think you understood what I think, but it's up to Ukraine to decide how the legal framework will be. Nevertheless, most of the people would tell you that the current shape of Ukraine agriculture should allow it to multiply by 4 or 5 the amount of exports and added value exports of what they do. Machinery, light manufacturing, same story. IT. In IT, currently we have a mandate to sell a 1,000 person strong information technology company in Central Europe. The demand is phenomenal because there is a lack of engineers, as I mentioned already. Ukraine already today has 4 companies that have at least 6,000 engineers here. So have 20, have 50, let them grow to 50,000, 60,000. And that is something where Ukraine can have companies that will be worth not 1.5 billion or $2 billion on market cap. Those companies could be worth 10 billion, 20 billion. And one day maybe one of those entrepreneurs sells the company, then it's going to be a bit the Israeli scenario, whereby the people in Israel who sold the companies to American or European companies then become the investors in other Ukrainian technological companies. And they'll be much better investors than any state-sponsored scheme who is going to decide who is a better entrepreneur. The entrepreneurs are the best to choose. So I would say agriculture, energy, IT, machinery, because today the differential in cost structure, and I agree, I understand what Mr. Chishkov says that Ukraine should shoot for the stars, but at the same time you need to employ the people and everybody, including those who don't have a master's degree and a PhD. And there, the light manufacturing and the labor-intensive automotive component making, textile, leather transformation, yes, absolutely, miod, honey. For reasons that I don't know why, there is a big deficit of honey these days. Those are the labor-intensive things where I think Ukraine can do. So really, I remember the difference between, let's say, the developed world and sometimes the Slavic world. So I'm a Slav also, and I'll give you one little anecdote. You know the
Just
song
short,
yeah, in America, you know the song Don't Worry, Be Happy? Yeah. Maybe you heard that song. Well, in Serbia, we had a group that was very popular who was called Don't Happy, Be Worry. That's the problem. We tend as Slavs always to see things worse than they are. So rather than encouraging each other, saying, yeah, that's great what you do more, or saying, what did you do? I want to learn because I want to do it, we say, oh, don't do it. It's too risky. Don't go there. And why do you have this car and I don't have that car? And actually, if you are successful, probably you're a thief. Because if you're successful and honest, maybe I'm incapable. But if you're successful and you're honest, and you're dishonest, at least I'm honest.
Thank you. I think that it's very untypical Slavs here on the panel because everybody is positive. Технология таки победила, я вам должен сказать. Пришел вопрос в Telegram.
I have a question from Telegram. I'd like to ask it to representatives from Ukraine. Today, you can be a serious player on the global market only thanks to serious technology, the Red Ocean strategy. Which strategy do you see in high-tech sphere that's the most realistic to create our own technological product in Ukraine? What forms of scaling should we use? As far as I understand, we need high technology, this competitive edge in Ukraine, in the world. Which technology in Ukraine can give us a quick competitive edge in the world in high tech? Mr. Anatoly, please. I'm really happy to see that the world begins to value the beautiful and talented people that we have. And uses IT as an example. This proves how potentially successful can Ukraine be at various parameters. In IT could become quite a powerful competitive edge for us. In certain cases, in IT sphere, we need to use the criteria of export, outsourcing, software building. We need to not to outsource our talents, but to use it here domestically. Another breakthrough thing is innovative industrial economy. We should sell, so to speak, not grain, but pasta, like in Italy. And the third thing is the human capital. For Ukraine, it's a question of utmost importance. Human resources, raw material economy will not give you enough highly professional employees. We are losing human capital. We should pay attention to this and create conditions for that new talented generation that thinks innovatively to be open to work in the world. And these directions are of utmost importance for Ukraine. The world is changing very dynamically. The time is crucial now. There are the points of no return, so to say. There is such a concept in science. We need to take into account the dynamics of the world, and we should never let the gap widen between ourselves and the developed world. Thank you very much. This is an illusion that we can only sell technology abroad. They also buy our corn and our grain very with great pleasure.
I was very impressed by a very modest country as Switzerland. But for us to get the same value as they get from the watches, we need to increase our production of grain threefold. They just make watches. So I think that we need to move towards, well, of course we have corn, we have grain. Let's build a supermarket. Let's build a Ukrainian Walmart, somewhere where we are more competitive. But let's fantasize. So let's talk about technologies. I have two ideas. Of course, this is just speculation. We need to trust our business people, and they will invent many things. They're gonna be better in gaming. They're gonna. Let's, with a bit of humor, we need to make a technology which where we can pilot in Ukraine. We need to build a gadget that will, when the person is unhappy, the gadget will say, you're happy, look at the brighter side. And we can try to sell Ukrainian happiness all around the world. And secondly is education, and this is where we can excel, because the need in education is at an all-time high. But I think that Ukraine, I think that Ukraine is going to be a top exporter of happiness in 10 years. So, now, I think that we can wrap up the panel. I think we overset a little bit. I'd like to give a round of applause of our panelists, of our participants. This was very dynamic. And so, regarding the world, everything is very complicated. I didn't hear a definitive answer about where the world is moving. Is it globalization, or is it populism, or is it protectionism? I hope our panelists wanted to reply to this question, but they're realistic, so they couldn't give me a definitive answer. So I heard a lot of things about Ukraine and its entrepreneurs. We have all different things, from grain and honey to bots. We have many things. We have immense potential, and just even in this kind of events like this one, if you see so many people dedicated to economics and entrepreneurship and inviting representatives of 30 countries in the world, that's nothing short of amazing. So thank you very much.